partner that's in the room.
That's me?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So hi, by the way. Thanks for having me here. So yeah, today we're announcing that we just launched a couple World Cup badges for CNN. And so on Foursquare, similar to what was just announced with Mashable, you can also follow CNN and start to discover tips about, the folks at CNN, they left tips at all 32 countries that are being featured in the World Cup. So anywhere that you are in the world, you can check in and start unlocking content on where you should go to watch the games, like the best spots out in public. And then there's 2 new badges for you to unlock. One if you actually make it all the way to South Africa, and another one if you can find some of these like top viewing spots if they've left scattered all throughout the world. So we're pretty excited about that, and thanks to CNN for making that happen for us.
So that's amazing. How does a media partnership kind of like that kind of work? Because it's different than the types of partnerships that we're used to that are kind of direct drivers of traffic to a site. Mm-hmm. What does a brand like CNN get out of doing something like that?
Well, I think it's tough right now. Like a lot of what we're doing is just experiments. Like we found this interesting formula that allows users to leave nuggets of content for other users to discover. And really that's like the whole intent of the first version of Foursquare. Like leave tips about bars and restaurants, and your friends come along and find them, and it makes your experience a little bit richer. And then we started seeing venues using it for their own purposes, and then we started seeing brands and media companies using it for their own purposes. And so I think people are really excited about the opportunity that Twitter offers, where you have like this direct communication channel with fans, and it's pretty easy and lightweight. And I think Foursquare is a little bit like that, except it's less timely. You can just take these pieces of content and just bury them tied to a lat long, and then you're giving the opportunity for users to find that stuff, maybe a day later or a couple days later or a month later. And so it's just kind of this, interesting ongoing experience. And I think there's a lot of things that we can build there to, help a lot more brands and media companies start to play with those tools.
Right. So Foursquare's growth, which was where I was originally going to start things out before this kind of CNN news came about today, it's really been incredible. Like July 2009, we kind of said, oh, Foursquare might be the next Twitter.
Yeah.
November 2009, Pete wrote on Mashable and CNN that you guys are the next Twitter. And now, I think I was at an event where you were speaking 2 weeks ago. You said you're adding 15,000 users a day. I know check-ins, you're approaching 1 million. Where are you guys at stats-wise?
Let's see. Last week we were chasing 1.5 million users, and this week we're chasing 1.6 million users. So it's growing. It's growing very quickly. We are approaching about, let's see, it's funny, like we see the check-in count increases by about 50,000 every week. So we went from 600 to 650 to 700, and then somehow jumped from 750 to 900 in a week. And it's like, oh God, like this is happening. And so it's really just like it sounds like they're really good problems to have, but then we sit with our engineering groups like these are very difficult problems to solve. And so like luckily, we get to look up to the Twitter guys because they've made it through this very difficult like technical scaling time, and we're learning a lot of lessons from some of the stuff that they've done. So we're really trying to plan and just plan ahead, thinking that we'll be able to fix some of those things.
How are you guys doing scaling wise? I know personally on my Android handset sometimes I have difficulty checking in or accessing my friends list. I know a lot of our readers, when we asked them what questions they had for you, a lot of it came down to reliability issues. Mm-hmm. Where are you guys at, and what are you doing to address it?
Yeah, so I mean, we're what are we, 25 people now? And so a lot of the stuff we've been doing is just racing to build things as quickly as we can. I mean, that's what we like to do. We like to build product and push it out at people. And we're not doing that as quickly as we'd like to, just because we're also dealing with scaling issues, and we have to put some engineering resources on that. What we did a couple weeks ago is we decided just to slow down for 2 weeks, and we took all the engineers off new features, and we just had them working consistently on just scaling issues. Let's build tools to help us monitor things. Let's migrate the database so it gets a little bit stronger. And I think even after just 2 weeks of doing that, we saw a lot of improvement. So I think we're going to start doing that on a semi-regular basis. Like every 6 weeks, we take a week off, and we just make sure that we're building to make sure that things stays up and running.
Mm-hmm. Now, with all that growth, we were just talking backstage about how that's kind of changed your life a little bit personally. You're no longer in the office every day. You're speaking at events like this all the time. You were just on the cover of Wired UK. How are you kind of dealing with that in terms of just growing a business during this kind of growth period that very few companies experience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's we went from 6 people to 25 people in like 5 or 6 months, and so it's like this really kind of an amazing ride. And I think one of the best things that we have going on, people are always excited about the product that we're building, and like it's fun to see us like inspiring other people to do new things in the space. But like we've assembled this killer team of people in New York, like some of the best engineers I've ever met, like some of the smartest product people, and they're all people that have been like tinkering in this space for a while. Just like people that had either blogs related to neighborhood issues or building software specifically to solve small problems for their friends. But this whole idea of like making cities easier to use, we've somehow like assembled a dream team of those folks. And getting to work with those guys every day is kind of awesome. And I think we're doing an okay job with it. Like we're just, there's a lot of people back at the office have their head down, just kind of building things. And I think that's it. We're doing pretty good. We're doing a pretty good job, I think, not being distracted by a lot of the other, stuff that's going on, surrounding us.
Right. So I think everyone in this room is pretty enthusiastic about Foursquare. I saw there's almost 100 people checked in here. We're beating the CM Summit.
Like I checked in, there was like 82 people checked in.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. Thanks for checking in.
Yeah. Despite all that, however, Time Magazine recently named you one of the 50 worst inventions.
Yeah.
Calling it the next generation of creepy social networking, another tool tapping into a generation of narcissism, and adding another layer onto a generation living virtually. Agree or disagree?
Disagree. I think we have a lot of work to do in this space. Like I think the ambition of the product roadmap, like it's a lot to explain to people, right? We're trying to build these things that like make cities easier to use. We're trying to do this thing that's like turning life into a game in a certain sense. And then you've got the whole experience of checking in is still kind of foreign to people. And I think people get, it's like, oh, why would I want to let my friends know where I am all the time? And I think that question is very similar to like, the 2 years that Twitter spent explaining that to the press and the media, like, why do people care that you're about to go to the movies? Or why do people care that you're eating a sandwich right now? And like, we do care about those things. It's nice to have this ambient awareness of just what your friends are doing and knowing that they're okay. You don't have to like write back, oh, I love that sandwich all the time, but just having this awareness of what people are doing is valuable. And we've been doing this stuff with even going back to dodgeball, like just simple presence update that's tied to location. These are the places that where to find your friends right now. You know what they're doing, and then I think the added element that Foursquare brings to some of it is the over time we can tell you about the types of places that your friends like to go to in these certain cities. And we can do really interesting things with that data. So that's like kind of the next step for us. Can I continue on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like I think the people that get most concerned about the privacy concerns are the ones that really haven't used the app. Like if anyone here has checked in, it's like, do you want to tell your friends where you are? Yes or no? Do you want to send this to Twitter? Yes or no? Do you want to send it to Facebook? Yes or no? Like it's pretty cut and dry.
Do you think that's what's made the difference between you and kind of the other location services that launched beforehand, maybe something like Looped or other apps that run in the background?
Well, I think there's two big differences between us and some of the other players. I'm not a big fan of the passive check-in model. Just like the idea of that something's tracking all the time. I think eventually we might all warm up to it, like in I don't know how far out that's going to be, but for now it just seems like opt-in is the way to do it. And people complain, oh, I forget to check in, but if we were checking you in everywhere you went, without you knowing about it, you'd probably be upset about that too. So I'm a firm believer in the opt-in, and maybe someday we get to do the hybrid stuff, like now that iPhone 4.0 can do stuff in the background and all these other things. Wait, what was the second part of that? I'm sorry.
Well, we were on Time Magazine's quote for a while. They said a lot of nasty things. I don't know.
Oh, that's whatever. I mean, people say good stuff about us all the time. They say nasty things all the time.
But continuing on theme, you talk a lot about Foursquare in cities.
Yeah.
Does it have kind of a life outside of the city? I just moved into New York in November and found it immediately useful. But for people that live kind of in the suburbs or even more rural parts of the country, is there potential there?
Yeah. I think we have to change that tagline, like the whole making cities easier to use. Like that's the thing that gets us really excited about building things. So it's like, you work all day and then you build these things that you actually see people using, at bars and restaurants at night, and you hear these stories about how it, helps people connect with folks. And, the stuff is specifically designed to work best in like the East Village and like the Lower East Side, like where we've been for 10 years. And what we're finding is that, if New York is a really hard city to design for. There's a really high density of people, places, and things to do. And if you can make stuff that actually works here, like there's a good chance it works everywhere else. And so this is one of those like interesting unintended side effects of the Foursquare stuff. Like it works great in suburbs, and people love using it to leave tips behind. And like when I go out to, my parents live in suburban Boston, and like I'll go to check in at the Chinese food place, and someone's left a tip about a new place I've never heard about, 3 miles away. And like that's interesting.
Right.
It's all kind of good stuff.
Right. So Foursquare now, I think you just said, is at 1.6 million users.
Closing in
on 1.6. Facebook's at 500 million. Twitter's at 100 million. What do you kind of see as the potential market size for you guys?
I don't know. It's like we're kind of just, I don't want to say making it up as we go along, but like we have the product roadmap, and we've had this product roadmap for a long time of all these things that we've wanted to build. And now it's just a question of like, how many people are going to go along for the ride with us. And I don't think anyone would have predicted in 2006 that Twitter was going to hit 100 million users. Because it's like, oh, why would anyone use this? But it's like, we all use this. We love Twitter, and I think people are going through the same type of thing with Foursquare. And like as much as we drink the Kool-Aid, I'm like, man, maybe I can definitely see us. We'll hit 5, we'll hit 10. Like, what happens after that? Do we get to 50? Do we get to 100? I bet we do. It's just the product is changing so quickly that when we sit down a year from now, we're going to be talking about completely different things, and like the scope of it's going to be completely different.
Right. In terms of things you want to build, do you kind of look at Foursquare as a major social networking tool? I mean, are you going to build out the kind of photo sharing features, the video sharing features? Twitter's kind of caught some flack from developers in recent weeks over, they've always said they were going to just be a platform, and then they went and launched their own mobile applications. Where do you guys kind of see your dev ecosystem evolving?
Yeah, the thing is we want to build all these things. It's just the hardest part is prioritizing. And we struggle with this all the time. What we'd like to do is really play nice with as many other social services as possible. Like, why should we host the photos? Maybe Facebook hosts them. Maybe Flickr hosts them. It's like we're doing the same thing right now with Facebook and Flickr. Like use Facebook and Twitter, like pushing as much content back out there because it brings folks in. So all these things we want to do. It's just a matter of prioritizing them. And the things that we are prioritizing are really it's like making the core experience better for users. Like right now, the only reason to pull Foursquare out of your phone, pull your phone out of your pocket and use Foursquare is you check in and put the phone away. And we're thinking maybe there's ways to interact with the other people that are here. I mean, there's Foursquare tells me there's 80 people in this room. It should tell me which of those 80 people I should meet. And it should enable some kind of interaction between those folks. And this is stuff that Alex and I have been talking about since Dodgeball, and Naveen and I have been talking about since the early days. And I feel like we've always had this roadmap of specific things that we want to do that really changes the way that people interact in physical space. And this is like our best shot to do that. So that's what it's. We just keep pushing at it.
So is that one of the reasons so far, anyways, you guys have kind of turned down the supposed acquisition offers to kind of go it alone?
Well, I mean, there's two things. Okay, what's the best thing for the company, and like what's the best thing for the product? And at this stage, like the 20 guys or 25 guys we have working in the office, like it's all about like we've built this. We've hustled to get this platform with like 1 million. Last time I gave this talk, I'm like with 1 million users now. It's like 1.5 million users. And it's really like I feel like you're building this stage so that it's the stage for yourself with all these users in front of you, so you can just build the things that you want to build and just like see how people use it. Like we're just genuinely excited about building product, and just whatever we can do to put the company in the best position to continue to build product the way we want to is what we're going to end up doing.
So going back to the developer thing, there's a lot of stuff you guys want to build. What are some of the cool apps you see out there already that developers are kind of building on top of Foursquare?
So I think one of the smartest things that I think Naveen and I did in the beginning. This is totally Naveen's call. Is that like we went to South by Southwest in March of not this year, last year, and people were like, oh, you have an iPhone app, you need an Android app. But instead of building the Android app, we spent all of our time building the API, like crossing our fingers that people would build something for us. And out of that, like we got an Android API, we got an Android app, we got a Palm app, we had like an early BlackBerry app, we had a Windows mobile app, and so like that was stuff that we didn't really have to worry about in the near term. It turned out to be like a really, really smart play. Now people are building all sorts of like interesting stuff on top of that API. And so like the first round of stuff we saw was all just like visualizations. Like, oh, here's, Foursquare doesn't do dots on a map. Oh, we'll show you dots on a map. And then dots on a map turned into heat maps, and then heat maps turned into like, other people that you should find that might be interesting. And now I think we're seeing like people build services on top of the API, which I think is the best part of it. So, a friend of mine is working on like a Monopoly game that's, built off of Foursquare check-ins. I'm like, that's awesome, right? I saw someone that was working on an app called Assisted Serendipity, which you basically tell it your favorite hangouts, and it lets you know when the guy-to-go ratio like swings in your favor, and you should go over there, right?
we wrote about that.
Yeah, it's cool, right? And then there's like I really like these apps that help people connect, that like can take the mess of like 100 people in this room or 80 people in this room and organize that data and help me like more efficiently just meet people. And we're seeing, like, we haven't gotten to that yet, but we're seeing other developers build that stuff off the API. And personally, that's the stuff that I find most interesting.
One thing I find interesting in the whole developer aspect of it, we have a lot of kind of brand and marketing folks in the room. This week we covered Pepsi launched their own application called Loot, which is essentially their own check-in app. The New York Times launched their own kind of local New York City app where you can check in using Foursquare. Do you see potential for these kind of branded applications that either utilize Foursquare or I mean, do you think in Pepsi's case, where they're building something that has its own check-in system, that has value? What do you kind of see there?
Well, a lot of these guys we have using the API already. It's like, why build your own check-in system when you can just piggyback off the Foursquare API? And that's one of the other unexpected things, the unexpected pieces of magic that came out of that. Like we were crossing our finger for the Android app, when we built this stuff initially, and now what are there, like 50 different clients that are using? I don't know what the number is. That are using different variations of the Foursquare API, and that's super exciting for us. And it seems like it's getting easier and easier for developers to build that stuff in, and then it enables them to build interesting location, not just location-aware content, but like kind of socially filtered location-aware content on top of things.
Mm-hmm. Staying with the brand theme for a minute, it seems you guys are announcing a new partnership every day. You announced the Starbucks one where mayors can now get discounts at Starbucks nationwide. Mm-hmm. Just the other day, you announced a partnership with the fashion designer Cynthia Rowley. How are you guys kind of approaching the retail space?
Retail, well, there's two ways to look at retail. So there's like there's the mom and pop chains, and then there's like the big national chains. Is that what you meant by retail? Mm-hmm. Or do you mean like Macy's and things?
The whole thing. Small
okay, it was the whole thing. And so, initially we were like, oh, this would be great for local merchants because, in New York, I generally think of New York as local merchants. It's, the bar across the street from us and the guy that sells tacos out of the truck and the, independent coffee shop down the street. It's like, oh, we should give them something that, lets them, spread the word about their business and bring people in and they can see stats and analytics and offer specials. And that's where we started. And then it was, then you get the calls from like Tasty Delight and from Starbucks, and like, okay, we'd love to do this, and we have 5,000 venues. And like, oh, that's a completely different problem to solve. So, what was just like, oh, we're going to do this thing for local merchants is now like mom and pop and like big retail, and we have two different groups that are working on, building the tools to help, venues verify their locations as well as like, building out the infrastructure to deal with these big chains. So it's like. A lot of, I think, even though there's other folks in the space, like Google has done some of the venue verification stuff, and Yelp has done it, and we're trying to do it too. It's like we're all doing it in a separate way, and it's still like a big problem that needs to be solved.
On the small business side of things, one question that our readers asked a lot, because we kind of put it out there on Mashable, what they wanted to know from you, was if small businesses are going to kind of be able to create their own badges and promotions the same way the big ones can.
Yeah. So there's not, like right now the badges are tied to, like specifically tied to check-ins. Is that what you're saying? Like, the venues want to create badges? Or?
Right, they want to create their own promotions for their brand, maybe like, something like CNN is doing.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So that's tough. Like we get like 100 emails a day from people that want to do business development stuff, and most of them are like, we want a badge. And I'm like, I know you want a badge because everyone wants a badge. But like, if there's 10,000 badges, the badges kind of lose their magic, and that's why we've been holding on to them pretty tightly. I think there's a solution here, and I think we're kind of stumbling upon it, right? So the CNN badge that we were talking about earlier, the only way you can get the CNN badge is by following CNN, and people understand the idea of following because Twitter's taught that to folks, and it's not it seems like it's kind of easy to understand that like, oh, if you want to participate in these various branded experiences on Foursquare, you follow 10 to 15 or 20 brands, and then that's 10 to 15 or 20 other badges that you have the ability to unlock. So they're not available to anyone. Just users can selectively, choose which experiences they want to follow. So we need to build, on top of the product and the scaling and the local business tools and the big chain retailer stuff and the stats and all the other stuff, we have to build those self-service branding tools and badge tools. So that's all this stuff is like we actually ran out of whiteboards in the office because there's just so much stuff to do, and it's just a matter of like picking them off one at a time. Mm-hmm. So someday, someday soon, I hope. So,
okay. With the badge thing. What do you think it is, the driver behind what makes that so interesting to people? I mean, a lot of them have no value whatsoever. When I was first kind of learning about Foursquare, I thought it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
What is it you think about badges that kind of, is getting people so excited? And do you think that's going to keep going? Is that something you guys can continue to play on?
Yeah, I think, when we heavily curate them, I think the badges are better. And I think it's about earning something, right? And so a lot of the badges that we made, like even those first 20 that we launched, like Naveen and I thought, oh, this will be fun for people for like a month. And like here we are, like a year later, and people are still kind of hooked on some of it. And people haven't unlocked all of them. So, I think I'm a big, believer, a big fan in this idea of software challenging people to do something and then rewarding you when you actually do it. Like, so a lot of the Foursquare stuff is inspired very heavily by Nike Plus. You know, in Nike Plus, you set these goals like, you know, if I can run 10 miles this week, I get the virtual trophy. I really don't care about the virtual trophy, but I'm pretty psyched that I actually set a goal for myself and I did the 10-mile run or 10 miles that week. And you know, I think Foursquare is kind of the same thing, and it doesn't have to be all serious and all exercise all the time, or whatever it is. Really, it's like, why not, you know, just, hey, we're calling you out for going to too many karaoke places. We're calling you out for going to too many barbecue places. And so I think some of it
I have the far, far away badge for living.
For going above 59th Street. That's tough to. If you're downtown going above 59th Street, that's tough to do. So yeah, I think there's cool things we can do. I think there's a lot more stuff we can do with tips too. You know, like the whole like tips and to-dos element. Like, these are things you said you wanted to do. Go out and do them, and then you get some kind of incentive or reward for them. Mm-hmm. Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
Oh, so like we do, like, you know, we think of the badges as like digital candy. And you know, like people talk about like badge fatigue now that there's all these different sites doing stuff. And like, what's the way that you combat like badge fatigue? Like we think about this stuff a lot, but like, we're starting to have some of the brands and media companies, like, the badges should be worth something. You know, like, if you unlock it, you actually, you know, you show it to the the bouncer, and he lifts the VIP rope, right? Or you click on the badge, and it gives you a promo code that you type in, and then, you know, Bravo sends you a gift pack or something. So we're doing some experiments with Internet Week. Did anyone get the Internet Week badges yet? Any of them? Right? So the first one that you get, if you go to the Internet Week headquarters during the day, what is it, Metropolitan Pavilion, right? And you check in, it unlocks a badge that you should be able to show to bouncers at some of the parties, and there's a separate line for people to have the badges. So you don't have to wait in line with the common folk, like all the Foursquare VIP folks, just to go right in. And then there's a, I can't remember the specifics of it, but there's, you know, if you go to enough events, you unlock a separate badge, which you bring back to like Internet Week headquarters, and it's like the first 25 people to do it get a free bottle of wine signed by Gary Vee. You know, and so, you know, it's like interesting experiments. Like, okay, you got the badge, now what? You know, and so, okay, the now what is like the lifting of the rope, the separate line, the gift pack, like whatever it happens to be. And I think that's there's something really worth exploring there.
Right. So it seems between all the stuff you're doing with big brands and small businesses and badges like you just talked about, there's a ton of opportunities to make money. But what is the kind of prioritization of, you know, a business model? And, you know, are we going to be waiting 2 or 3 years to find out how you guys make money similar to Twitter?
No, I think we're actually, we've generated some revenue already this year. And so people, you know, when we raised financing, we raised $1.35 million from Unisquare and O'Reilly. And we've been running for, you know, I mean, we've been running pretty quick for like 8 months or so. And people are like, where's all the money? It's like, well, we actually had some money coming in. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of offset those costs a little bit. So we're definitely seeing that it's doable. You know, the trick is you just don't want to do it too quickly. And I think we're onto something really like special and, you know, magical with what we're doing with local merchants. And we see local merchants getting super, super excited about like, hey, I threw a party, a swarm party, and I had 100 people show up in my bar, and I made a ton of money that day. You know, and the users were psyched about it because they earned a badge. Or, you know, there's a place in I don't know if it's Madison, Wisconsin. This burger place, AJ Bombers, and they were running this special, you know, in Foursquare, and it's like, yeah, we sold 30% more burgers, and we were running the special. Like, and these are, you know, we're just barely scratching the surface because we're so small and so scrappy, and there's like 3 or 4 people that are working on this. But as we start to build out the team, and as we start to understand how people are using this stuff, like, there's going to be something very, very strong there in a way that, you know, and I think it's going to exist in a way that other products haven't before. And offer local merchants some insight into like how people are using their business and how people are interacting with their business and how people are spreading the word about their business through social media. And I think there's lots of monetization opportunities there for us. We just have to, you know, focus on them and pick out which ones they are.
Sure.
But I mean, for now, it's just like get the product working, keep it up and running, and then build all these things we want to build, and everything else will come afterwards.
Right. So you guys said you raised a little over $1 million. Mm-hmm. You're now employing 25 people, and are you guys going to need to raise more money, or are you almost there in terms of profitability?
No, we're not there in terms of profitability. It's just not something that we're focusing on. It's just, you know, we've been lucky enough to generate some revenue, but you know, it hasn't been without really focusing on it, which is a really fortunate thing. You know, at some point we got to figure out what we're gonna end up doing, and we haven't really been commenting too much on it. But you know, I think you'll probably hear stuff from us in the future.
Okay. I want to spend the last segment talking a bit about gameplay, because this is what a lot of our readers
this is like my favorite part of it, too.
So just last week, we saw an app called When Will I Be Mayor, which essentially tells you how many check-ins you need to become mayor of a certain venue. So people who are obsessed with mayorships, you know, can go after it and sort of cheat. I mean, first off...
And sort of cheat?
Yeah. A little biased. How are you guys kind of addressing the cheating issue, though? And how are you making businesses who kind of want to offer incentives based on mayorships comfortable with you guys doing enough to stop it?
Yeah, it's the cheating stuff is kind of a drag, and it's not a huge number of users, but if someone steals away like your hard-earned mayorship, like it stings, you know. And so, for a while it was like the Wild West with check-ins. You could just check in anywhere you wanted, and we did that just because, like, hey, like we'll play by the honor system. And once you hit 100,000 users, like the honor system goes out the window, and you've got like a couple bad apples that are just out there like going crazy with things. So now we have like a little bit of geo-policing where you have to be close enough to the venue, and I'm sure some of you guys have experienced that. That message that says, "Oh, looks like you're too far away from this place. We'll check you in, but no points are bad." Has you guys seen that? A couple of folks? Yeah. What's lousy is that like we're using pretty primitive GPS technology on phones, and sometimes the device knows that I'm sitting right in the middle of the office, and sometimes it thinks I'm 3 blocks away, and sometimes other devices think I'm like in New Jersey when I'm in the middle of Manhattan, and it's just tough, and we have to wait for the devices to, I think some of the ideas that we're pushing are more mature than the technology that can police them, you know? So that's tough to deal with. With the local merchant stuff, in terms of, ensuring that, the people that are getting the rewards are the ones that deserve them. I think Starbucks did a good job addressing this. Like, you're not getting something for free from Starbucks, you're just getting $1 off. So, like, you're there, you're purchasing something, and you're still feeling special about it.
Right.
And, I think the incentive to cheat goes down a little bit.
And your friends see that you checked in there as well, which is
yeah, that's one of the other, like, unexpected, interesting things that came out of the Foursquare stuff. Like, when people check in and they send their check-ins to Twitter and to Facebook, it's almost like a little mini ad for that coffee shop. Like, we see it as just like, hey, if the more people that know that I'm at JFK right now, the better, because that's going to, increase the odds that I meet someone that's going to, cause this layover to suck less. But instead, like, if you're checking in at the Mud Truck or Think Coffee or the Scratcher, people become ambiently aware of these places. Like, what is this place you're always going to? What's that restaurant you went to last night? And that's of some value to the local merchant, and we're able to measure some of those impressions. It's like little social media impressions that local businesses get.
Now, as you guys continue to grow, it's going to become harder and harder for people to become mayor, obviously, because they're going to be competing with a larger pool.
Yeah.
Might you guys offer some other kind of status levels and things like that?
Yeah, I don't want to go too nerdy with like mayor and vice mayor and all the way down. We've talked about that in the office. I think it's about like rewarding the best customers at a particular place. And so maybe there's a title that you shoot for, but then there's like a whole crew of people underneath it. And that's something that we've been thinking about for a while, because that's what local businesses want. Like the mayor stuff is pretty sexy, but you're only rewarding one user, and the one user that's here every day anyway. So what you want is like to create a little bit of competition between users, and we hear that feedback from local merchants, and we're building some stuff on our end to address that.
Right. Now, another issue you guys moved recently to address, which actually kind of hurt me, because you removed duplicate locations, or locations you thought were duplicates. Because we have this new office, and Brett's been the mayor since day one. So I created Mashable Editorial Command Center, and that got removed. So I was kind of pissed about
we've
that.
got, first of all, on behalf of Foursquare, I apologize. And thank you for contacting Foursquare customer support. Like we've outsourced a lot of this to our users. Like, we have levels of super. Is anyone here a super user? You're right. Thank you for editing and fixing. Super users, good users get promoted to super user status, and they get the ability to edit and merge. And most of them are good people, And there's occasionally you get like your rogue bad apple that's like, I'm gonna merge all the rides in Disneyland into one, because it's Disneyland, and people are like, no, it's Space Mountain. And so like these are the flame wars that go on like in the Get Satisfaction forum. Like, Disneyland is one place, Disneyland is 100 places, and people are very passionate about it either way.
Yeah.
In your case, it's a little fuzzy, east side of the office versus west side of the office. Like, we see these types.
We
of
did
things.
call you guys the Twitter of 2010. Come on.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So, no, that's a tricky. In seriousness, like that's a tricky problem to solve. Like, we have got a ton of data. A lot of it's user-generated data, and so our belief is that you give the tools to the users to police the data. Again, like the super user structure was kind of like the way that we were looking at cheaters. Like, oh, this is great until you hit 100,000, 500,000 users, and then a couple bad apples get in the system, and it gets a little strange. So these are also things that we're working on addressing. Like, they're issues that we're aware of. We've written a bunch of algorithms, like on the places screen, that remove well, they don't remove, but they kind of bubble down. Can you say that? Bubble down, like a term? I don't know. Personal residences, places that seem like junk venues, like places that no one checks into. So the more popular places rise to the list. And we can do some of this stuff algorithmically, and the rest of it, we're going to build better tools for super users to handle.
So where I want to leave things, because we're out of time, is privacy. We did touch on it a little bit earlier. But with the site Please Rob Me that came out, it kind of really came to the forefront.
Yeah.
And what are you guys kind of thinking? I mean, are you going to build controls so you can kind of say who I can share my location with at certain times? What are some of the things we can expect?
I actually think we do a pretty good job with this right now. We're pretty transparent about how the privacy works. If you don't want anyone to know who you are, don't check in. If you want to, if you want to share this with your friends or not, hit the share switch. If you want to send it to Facebook or Twitter, do that stuff. We could really get complicated about it. Certain people know at certain times, but it's adding a lot of complexity. And we might get to the point where we need to do that, but I don't think we're there right yet. It's interesting. As soon as we built tools that allow local merchants to see who their best customers were and the check-in habits of certain things, we added additional privacy switch, which is hey, if you don't want to be a part of these stats, just click this box and you are not part of them. And so that's been our approach. We're pretty conscious of every time we launch a new feature, it could potentially change the the experience and the privacy implications. And we think these things through. And every now and then a new setting appears on the settings page, specifically designed to kind of tailor some of those needs. But I think most people by keeping everything opt-in and by being pretty transparent with it, I think we've been doing an okay job so far. If anyone feels differently, please.
I think people probably agree with that one, actually.
Yeah.
So
okay, well,
we'll leave it there.
Great.
Thanks so much,
Well,
Dennis.
thanks for having me up here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.